I've got some very big and pretty important news in regards to the future of Fairy Tail and Fairy Tail 100 Years Quest. As many of us in the fandom know, Hiro Mashima has a tendency to go and do Twitter Spaces or Twitter Lives to just talk directly to the fans. Talk about what's on his mind at the moment, or answer some questions. And at the very end of July 25th, or 26th I think, Hiro Mashima got on live and actually gave us some very important information on the potential future of Fairy Tail. And I'll just say this right now, Fairy Tail as an entire franchise, it ain't ending anytime soon, most likely. So we'll get into that in a second. But before we do, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. So let's just jump right into some of the most important news that we got from Hiro Mashima. And the news I'm getting is essentially translated by someone on Twitter by the name of HWSHIR that I managed to find information that was posted in the Fairy Tail Discord. So credit to them for translating some of the important bits of what Hiro Mashima was talking about during that live. So let's just go over something really quick, is that Hiro Mashima likes hero and heroine type stories, and even ones that don't necessarily end up together. And so he's a big fan of the pairing of Natsu and Lucy that he does a lot of the time, and he likes that a lot of fans do. Heck, this Twitter live was done on Nalu Day, essentially, a day for Natsu and Lucy, and he posted a brand new artwork of the two of them, which actually looks pretty damn cool. But yeah, he likes that fans love and support his pairings, and he wasn't expecting that originally. And he even said that he didn't realize that a lot of fans like these characters as a romantic pair and not just as friends. Now, we all know Hiro Mashima sometimes tends to be coy and likes literally edging us with all of the artwork that he does for all the pairings in this series. Let's not deny it. But I feel like Hiro Mashima is just tiptoeing on the fact that maybe I won't make them a pair. Maybe I'll just leave them as friends. Who knows? As the guy that he is, I guess. He even says that he doesn't really write romance in his series in some of the most romantic way, but he still writes romance. Kind of roundabout way saying that he's included some romance in his series. Kind of a roundabout answer. But here's the interesting thing. He talks about two things: a potential extension or sequel to 100 Years Quest, and Ankhseram, the god that cursed Zeref. Let's get into the Ankhseram part. Mashima said that Ankhseram is a story that he was open to writing, but the initial idea came from director Ishihara, but he doesn't know if he will do it. Now, he's most likely talking about Shinji Ishihara, who was the director of the original Fairy Tail anime. So the idea of having a series or a storyline revolving around this god that cursed Zeref in the main story was something that was basically asked if he would be open to doing by the director of the anime. And the fact that Hiro Mashima said, just flat out and admitted in this quick Q&A essentially, I'm open to the idea, I just don't know how I will be able to go through and make it into a storyline right now. I don't know how I'd be able to do it. So the possibility for answers of revolving around this god, deity, that of life and death or whatever, in the Fairy Tail universe is definitely in Mashima's head. He just hasn't figured out how he can make that into a potential story arc or even a spin-off regarding it. So, for one, I thank the director of the Fairy Tail anime for putting that idea in Mashima's head, because this is probably going to be nagging at him for a while until he actually gets a chance to make himself just want to talk about the story once he gets it to an idea that he can actually talk about. But I would like an extension on the Fairy Tail lore, because the gods of this universe, we don't really know about Ankhseram, so it would be interesting if we got to expand more on that, and who knows, maybe we could expand on Godslayer magic, because God forbid we learn why and how Godslayer magic existed in the first place, and potentially the fan theory that I also subscribe to, that Zeref was the creator of Godslayer magic to try and slay the god that cursed him to undo the curse potentially, but hey, look, that's just me and some other people in the fandom that had that idea. Who knows? But yeah, Godslayer magic definitely needs to be explored more, and I feel like if we had a series at least revolving around Ankhseram, whether it be a prequel story that tells Godslayer magic's origins and how that could have to do with that god, or a sequel spin-off story that could actually star the Godslayers and give them some shit to do, since they are irrelevant now since we had Godslayers, unless they're Sharia, but either way, Sharia isn't as strong as she used to be, but that's kind of the point at this point. But yeah, I feel like it'd be something that the fans would love to see if Mashima could really pull off and make a series like that. And it would definitely fill out the world of Fairy Tail more. And now, another piece outside of this is a potential extension of 100 Years Quest. So, apparently, the magazine that is running 100 Years Quest wants to extend the Fairy Tail story. And Mashima mentions another sequel after 100 Years Quest, but he isn't sure if the current artist, Ueda, will work on it because he might be exhausted by the time 100 Years Quest comes to an end. So, an entirely new artist would have to come into the fold, potentially. But here's another thing that Mashima said that is also very interesting outside of the potential extension of the Fairy Tail series, which we'll get into again in a second. Mashima says he's not even sure if he'd be the one to write another sequel to Fairy Tail. That is interesting. Now, while I brought up just now about the Ankhseram story arc that Mashima would want to do if he could get himself to do it, here Mashima basically says, I don't know if I want to keep writing for Fairy Tail right now. I might do it, I might not. But he also said he would like to still be involved with Fairy Tail in some way. So it could be more as a advisory role or something. Maybe similar to how Toriyama, rest in peace to the GOAT, managed to essentially oversee Toyotaro's whole thing with the Super manga. Basically be a mentor and have a apprentice to take over the series and have it keep running like Dragon Ball Super at this point. Same thing with the Dragon Ball Super anime, but that's a whole kerfuffle with legal rights and the Dragon team and that entire thing with the anime's production. That I know for a fact is a whole mess, and I'm not even involved in the Dragon Ball fandom. But like, it would make sense for Mashima if he wants to step away from actually doing the legitimate writing full on for Fairy Tail and focus on his other stuff. Like right now he's got Dead Rock. He's been saying for a while he wants to try and do another weekly series, an entirely brand new series. Has been wanting to make his own script for an animated project sometime in the future. He's got a lot of things that he wants to do, and I can kind of understand why he wouldn't want to be fully in Fairy Tail's wheelhouse again for a third series in a row revolving around the same story that he wrote. And it's going to be 20 years old soon, so that's something to consider for him to be basically trying to extend Fairy Tail even more. But we do know that for a while now, 100 Years Quest was a corporate decision. Kodansha wanted more Fairy Tail because of how successful it was. And so while Mashima was getting started on Eden Zero, he also started penning out the story, or at least ideas, for 100 Years Quest, and then started doing both simultaneously for a couple of years. And we all know that 100 Years Quest had relative consistent quality at the beginning, but once he started working on Dead Rock as well, the quality kind of, was rickshawing, essentially. And even now in the manga, I feel like Mashima has ideas for Fairy Tail, but he's probably might be feeling a bit burnt out, considering the fact that he's been doing this for a while with a singular series. But that could just be me, and me being pessimistic. Either way, I would like to see Mashima kind of pass the baton to somebody else, a new artist, writer that loves Fairy Tail and that he can mentor. They can mimic his style to an extent and continue the story. Now, potential continuations for Fairy Tail after 100 Years Quest, that's a whole other wheelhouse. Obviously, we have the Ankhseram thing that I mentioned earlier, but who knows? We could end up getting a Fairy Tail Next Generations type series that follows the children of the main team in Fairy Tail, Team Natsu, and their adventures for all we know. And we could use that to expand the lore of the world, similar to how we have Four Knights of the Apocalypse, Shaman King Flowers, Boruto, as well as, I guess you can count JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, but you also have Yashahime too. Now, obviously there's a bunch of varying quality with all of these different series in terms of actual next-gen continuations, but the point still stands that it's still possible to be done, and if the right writer is involved, and if Mashima is still involved in some way, shape, or how, not being the direct writer, it could still end up being very good, and it could end up giving us some nice Fairy Tail goodness. And also, the big important thing, it gives us a nice reset. Because with how 100 Years Quest is going, our main group in Fairy Tail, they're going to be super, super powerful by the end of that also, if they weren't already powerful enough as it is. So by the end of 100 Years Quest, it'd be kind of hard to believe, outside of maybe the Ankhseram arc, to give any real more sense of stakes and progression and escalation for power creep for the series, because you just have to keep going higher and higher and higher. So having a bit of a reset, focusing on the kids, similar to how Four Knights of the Apocalypse, and even to an extent Boruto, I don't count Boruto as much, but more so Four Knights of the Apocalypse, Shaman King and Yashahime did in terms of, keeping things in a way where the next generation will have stakes and issues. The past generation could potentially come in and help, but it will mostly squarely focus on the new main cast. And so that could be the primary focus of a next generation fairy tale series. Gee, I wonder if somebody is going to end up making a video talking about a pitch for what could potentially be in a fairy tale next generation series. Man, I don't know. What do you guys have any ideas? What do you think we'll end up doing that? I legitimately have no real clear answers at this point. But yeah, Fairy Tail doesn't seem like it's going to be going anywhere. It just comes down to if Mashima decides to keep writing Fairy Tail or pass it off to somebody else while he's overseeing it, while he's doing his own other stuff. And I wouldn't be opposed to it. Again, we have to see how 100 Years Quest ends, because if anyone watched my last chapter review, I've been feeling kind of weird with the pacing of how things have been progressing in the manga right now in the most recent chapters. And so I feel like Mashima's kind of lost focus to an extent. And that could be due to burnout for writing the series for so long while also wanting to do other stuff. But that could be just me looking way too far into things. Either way, it probably would be better for the series if we had a bit of a reset to maybe the next generation and build up from there. And the series can go on from that point onwards and have our previous main characters come back in. Or Mashima could just potentially just give ideas for Fairy Tail, someone else writes it, and then he goes off to do his own new series again, for all we know. But that's just my thoughts and opinions on the recent news that we got from Hiro Mashima. Do you think Fairy Tail will still continue? Apparently the magazine still wants Fairy Tail to keep going, but do you think Hiro Mashima will be the one to keep writing Fairy Tail till the day he eventually retires? If he wants to retire. The man wants to do a crap ton of things all at once. We've seen it multiple times. Or do you think Fairy Tail will potentially end with 100 Years Quest, and that'll probably be the last we see of Fairy Tail, if at all, outside of crossover materials and games and stuff like that? And how do you feel about the idea of the Ankhseram stuff being a potential mini story arc or spin-off for the future to explore more? Leave your thoughts and opinions on this news in the comment section down below. And once more, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. And with all that said and done, I hope you all have an awesome day.